Okay, now, we've been doing a segment on this show called the Rapture Report for quite some time. This started a couple of years ago as the big 2000 date was approaching, and all the religious and New Age nutcases came out of the woodwork to tell us how the world was about to end.
And stock up on bottled water and top ramen.
Yeah, and so what we did is we announced the upcoming announced demises of the world, and then as those dates would come and go, we would check them off the list to let people know that, no, in fact, that person who made a prediction was wrong, that person who made a prediction was wrong, that person who made a prediction was wrong.
I guess just the Earth didn't get the message it was supposed to end.
I hope that you've all enjoyed that series and that you got the point, which is that people who claim to know that the world is about to end because of Scripture or revelation are completely full of shit. And this principle can reasonably be extended to just about any other wild claims that religious or New Age nitwits make about anything. Okay? But since that we are now well past 2000, right, and nearing the end of 2001,
they're kind of trickling off.
They're dying off, and so we've been doing this segment more and more infrequently. And I think it's time to just put it to rest. The world is not about to end. That whole frenzy was completely stupid from beginning to end, and now I think that is completely clear. Instead,
I mean, that calendar date was just entirely arbitrary anyway. I mean, that was just
that's right.
It was
right. Never made a lick of sense.
People made that up. I mean, it just
and people have been predicting that the world was about to end ever since Jesus, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus said to his apostles, according to the Bible, that it's all going to hit the fan
in your lifetimes.
In the lifetimes of those people in there with the room with them, with the lifetimes of the apostles. Well, those apostles are way dead, unless there's some 2,000-year-old apostles creeping around out there that we're not aware of. So enough of that. Let's move on to something more interesting. I'd like to return to a series of talks that I gave a couple of years ago in our early time slot, probably for a mostly different audience than we have now, on the subject of critical thinking. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just jump right in and do the first segment of that again.
I don't mind, Jeff.
And we don't have any calls yet, so now's a great time.
Yeah.
Okay, reasoning and science. We often get callers who comment on how intelligent and educated we are. And I personally find this hilarious because I am a high school graduate with 2 years of art school, which I dropped out of. Okay? That's it. That's the extent of my formal education. So why is it that an undereducated guy like me comes across as so intelligent and educated to our viewers? And I think the answer is that I have developed one skill that most people never learn, and that is how to think. Most people simply do not know how to draw reasonable conclusions from evidence, because our educational system tends to concentrate on teaching students what to think, but not how to think. That's an oversight I will attempt to remedy in this series. Boy, was I pompous when I wrote this 2 years ago. Sorry about that, folks. Excuse the pompous tone. These talks are intended to explain...
How do I think, Jeff? I don't know how.
Sorry. That's okay, Mikey. I'll teach you.
Because I just went to college, you know.
All right.
I don't know nothing.
These talks are intended to explain the practical advantages of good reasoning skills to the average viewer. I won't be getting into any deep philosophical questions. I'm just going to explain various rules of thumb that you can use to increase your reasoning skills and provide examples of how they can work so that you can see their practical value before you adopt them. Now, I know a lot of the viewers out there who are religious believe that human reasoning is so limited that there are areas in which we should set aside reasoning and just go ahead and believe. Okay, fine. You can still benefit from improved reasoning skills in those cases where you think reasoning is appropriate. And since you are still on your own when you have to decide whether or not reasoning is even appropriate in a particular situation, you can use these reasoning skills to help you decide what are the appropriate situations and which ones aren't. Okay, the first issue that I want to talk about is falsifiability. That you may have heard scientists bandying this term around in response to various supernatural claims. And I'd like to explain to you what that actually means. The principle of falsifiability means that it must be possible to conceive of evidence that would prove a claim false before it makes any sense to believe that claim. That may sound paradoxical, but for any claim to be true, it has to be falsifiability. The rule of falsifiability is a guarantee that if the claim is false, the evidence can prove that it is false. And if the claim is true, the evidence will not disprove it, in which case the claim can be tentatively accepted as true until such time as evidence is brought forth that does disprove it.
Right. And not to break it
No,
down.
go ahead.
Well, I think that is a misunderstanding that some people have about the scientific method.
Right.
You have Joe Scientist, right?
Right.
Has a hypothesis.
Right.
And Joe Scientist, his job at that point is not to go out and just find the evidence that proves the hypothesis.
Right.
He sets out to disprove his hypothesis.
Yeah, he has to be able to think of ways, of things he might discover that would show that he was wrong.
Yeah.
And then he has to test those possibilities.
And it's only when you can no longer disprove the hypothesis or falsify the hypothesis.
Well, it's that the more you try to prove it wrong,
you instead
more you have reasonable ways that you could prove it wrong if it was wrong, and you try and you can't, then the more reliability it deserves. Okay.
Right.
The rule of falsifiability, in short, says that the evidence has to matter. And as such, it is the first and most important and most fundamental rule of evidential reasoning. The rule of falsifiability is essential for this reason. If nothing conceivable could ever disprove the claim, then the evidence that does exist doesn't matter. It would be pointless to even examine the evidence because the conclusion is already assumed. The claim is invulnerable to any possible evidence. This would not mean, however, that the claim was true. It would mean that the claim was meaningless. This is because it is logically impossible for a claim to be true no matter what. For every true claim, you should always be able to conceive of evidence that would show that the claim wasn't true. For example, the true claim that the lifespan of human beings is less than 200 years is falsifiable. It would be falsified if there were evidence that a single human being had ever lived to be more than 200 years old. Mm-hmm. Similarly, the true claim that water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit is falsifiable. It would be falsified if water were to freeze at, say, 34 degrees. Each of these claims is firmly established as a scientific fact, and we don't expect either of them to be falsified. However, the point is that either of them could be, because we can think of examples of things that would be evidence that it was wrong.
Okay.
Any claim that could not be falsified would be devoid of any propositional content. That is, it would not be making a factual assertion. It would instead be making an emotive statement, a declaration of the way the claimant feels. Non-falsifiable claims don't communicate information, but do communicate information, but all that they describe is the claimant's value orientation. They say nothing whatsoever of a factual nature, and hence are neither true nor false. Non-falsifiable statements are propositionally vacuous. It means they don't mean anything.
Okay, so can you apply an example of this to the God question?
I can, and I certainly shall.
Okay.
There are two principal ways in which the rule of falsifiability can be violated, and these are things to look for when people are making claims to you, okay?
Okay.
The first variety of non-falsifiable claims is the undeclared claim, a statement that is so broad or vague that it lacks any meaning. Mm-hmm. The undeclared claim is basically unintelligible and meaningless. For example, suppose a crystal therapist tells you that they can use pieces of quartz to restore balance and harmony to your spiritual energy. What does it mean to have unbalanced spiritual energy? How is the condition recognized and diagnosed? What evidence would prove that someone's unbalanced spiritual energy had been or had not been balanced by the application of crystal therapy?
Right.
Most New Age claims, in fact, consist of similarly undeclared claims that completely dissolve when exposed to the solvent of rationality.
In other words,
when you ask the questions, saying, how can you know that this is true? Their claims are phrased in a way where you can't know that it's true.
So in other words, the claim presupposes the existence of something that has not been established firmly.
Right.
And which means that it's invalid. Okay.
The undeclared claim has the advantage that virtually any evidence that could be adduced could be interpreted as supporting the claim. And for that reason, it is especially popular among paranormalists who claim precognitive powers. Getting back to that Raptor report thing again. Gene Dixon, for example, predicted that 1987 would be a year filled with changes for Caroline Kennedy. Dixon also predicted that Jack Kemp would face major disagreements with the rest of his party in 1987, and that worldwide drug terror would be unleashed by narcotics czars in the same year. She further revealed that Dan Rather may or may not be hospitalized in 1988, that Whitney Houston's greatest problem in 1986 would be balancing her personal life against her career. None of these claims is clear enough for it to be obvious whether it was true or not. There are so many ways that it could be interpreted as true that, in fact, none of those ways can be interpreted.
That's how psychics cover their hinders, is, they make a claim, a prediction that's so amazingly vague that it could apply to any moron
Right.
I mean, everybody is going to, who has, unless you're homeless, is going to have problems in a given year balancing your personal life against your career. Right. That's going to apply to anybody.
Right.
So
the second variety of non-falsifiable statements, which is even more popular among paranormalists, involves the use of multiple outs. That is, an inexhaustible series of excuses that explain away any evidence that would seem to falsify the claim. Creationists, for example, claim that the universe is no more than 10,000 years old. They do this despite the fact that we can observe stars which are billions of light years away from the Earth, which means that the light must have left those stars billions of years ago, and that proves that the universe must be billions of years old.
Right.
Creationists respond to this claim by suggesting that their God created that light already on its way from that distant star at the moment of creation 10,000 years ago. Once they have postulated a God that can do anything, there is no way to falsify any claim about it. Right? There is no way to think of a way you could prove that the God didn't do what they say. And so that doesn't mean that it's false. It means there's no way to know, and it's a completely meaningless assertion.
Right.
It does mean that there is absolutely no sense in assuming that it's true.
Right.
Additional examples of multiple outs abound in the realm of the paranormal. UFO proponents, faced with a lack of reliable physical or photographic evidence to buttress their claims, point to a secret government conspiracy that's hiding the evidence, right? You can't prove that we're not right because the government stole the evidence. Psychic healers say that they can heal you if you have enough faith. And so if you don't get healed, they say it was your fault.
Yeah, you didn't have a...
Right. Psychokinetics, people who think they can move or heat things with their bend spoons with their minds, claim that if they are exposed to negative vibrations from skeptical observers, that interferes with their powers. So anytime anybody cares whether they are telling the truth or not, then a magical force intrudes that prevents them from being disproved.
I see.
The multiple out means, in effect, heads I win, tails you lose.
Right. There's always an explanation for why the thing. I remember having an email exchange about a year ago with some woman who was into all this New Agey nonsense and who was also a Scientologist, which was amusing.
Oh boy.
But she claimed to talk to the dead, talk to dead spirits, and I said, okay, well, here's something. Can you maybe get in touch with Alexander the Great and find out where his tomb is? Because I'm sure that would be not only a big boon to archaeology, but I think it would be a pretty good way of establishing some credibility for your I Talk to the Dead claims.
Right.
And she immediately came back and said, oh, well, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
I have to
It doesn't work in a way that would have to work if you were really in communication with somebody who really knew all the things that Alexander the Great knew.
Yeah.
It would have to work that way.
Yeah.
And to claim that it doesn't is just making an excuse.
Yeah.
Now, thank you very much for listening to this week's Critical Thinking Talk. Next week, we're going to talk about the principle of comprehensiveness, which states that the evidence offered in support of any claim must be exhaustive. That is, all of the available evidence must be considered. You can't just pick a few bits which seem to support you and rest your entire case on that.
Yeah.
That's not fair. You have to take into account evidence that tends to disagree with what you are saying also.
You especially have to take that into account.
Let's go to the phones, shall we?
Why not? Let's see what we got going on today.
Aaron.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Aaron. How are you? We're good.
All right, glad to hear it. I just want to say, first of all, that I enjoy that you're doing this bit on, critical thinking skills and that, because I do think that's probably the biggest problem out there as far as, evaluating these things and that. And just sort of to supplement that, one thing that always galls me, I just want to bring this up, a little bit tangential, but one thing that always galls me is when people talk about the existence of God as somehow explaining the existence of the universe. Because specifically, one thing you hear a lot, I listen to religious radio for laughs all the time, so you'll have to pardon me if I...
No,
that's all right. I do too.
Yeah.
But I also listen to it just to, actually hear what they have to say. I don't think that it's right for me to sit here and comment on what religious people think if I'm not actually listening to them. So there's that too.
I basically agree with you. I mean, the other thing too is...
Well, you don't have to. You're not on TV. But
counter arguments too, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I listen to these guys like, D. James Kennedy and Hank Hanegraaff and some of these guys, and they'll do things like talk about, the odds. You know what I mean? The odds of the universe coming into existence, like the whirlwind hitting the junkyard and it turning into a 747 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, they never apply that argument to God himself.
Huh?
They never apply that line of reasoning to God himself.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, aside from the fact that if you're dealing with an infinite amount of time, then all of a sudden odds don't come into it anymore, right?
Yeah.
But,
right. Well, I mean...
It's like, okay, maybe it's incredibly unlikely the universe would spontaneously come into existence, but those are the facts that we have here, and so we posit that this being that's superior to the universe existed first and created this inferior creation is even more grandiose.
Right. It makes it
facts at hand.
Right. Now we interestingly, we were just talking about the rebroadcast of the audio portion of previous episodes of this show on www.freethoughtradio.com. And the episode that they were airing this past week, I don't know if this is still on because I don't know exactly when they switch over. But it was a show where we had a caller who was arguing the anthropic principle with us, right? Which is basically, well, the universe is so unlikely that, that it should be just like this, that it had to have been intentionally made this way.
Yeah, so that we could
and his answer to that question about where did God come from was, well, you can't have an infinite regress, and so you have to postulate something. And I said, but as soon as you postulate something, doesn't it have to follow the same rule about things have to come from somewhere? He said, no, it's the God is made of a different kind of substance. So he's just invented a new kind of... Actually, he didn't. Thomas Aquinas did. Invented a new kind of substance for God to be made out of that was immune to this principle that he was applying to the universe. And it's just cheating. You just can't make up special rules for, you can't just make up beings and then make up special rules for those beings to live by to answer the question. It doesn't answer the question, it diverts the question.
Yeah, it's a logical fallacy called special pleading.
That's right.
It's when you have a problem, say, and you suggest an answer to the problem, but the answer doesn't have to obey the same rules that the problem presumably has to obey. So the whole idea that it gets back to if the universe was intelligently designed, well, who designed God? Well, nobody, because then why did the universe have to be intelligently designed, but God didn't have to?
Right.
They don't really have an explanation for that other than God's God, and that's that.
Right.
So it's
that's thanks for bringing up logical fallacies. Another thing I want to mention to our viewers is that on communities.msn.com/thinkfest there are free downloads of graphics you can print out on business card sheets, like those laser cut or perforated business card sheets that are they are logical fallacy flashcards in effect. They go over a bunch of these different logical fallacies, giving a definition of what the logical fallacy is and an example of how it works.
We'll try to get a link to that on our own links page.
That is a good idea.
ACA links page. We'll talk to Russell about that. Just make it easier.
Amanda put that together, and it's pretty keen.
But yeah, it's but even then, I mean, let's just say, assuming for the sake of argument that the whole creation of the universe was even a stochastic, a random process at all, or the creation of the Earth, or life on the Earth, or what have you. Well, once again, like you said, if you're talking about this infinite cosmos or a extremely large cosmos in which big numbers really aren't that intimidating, what have you proven? All you've proven is that, on this planet at a particular point in time, a highly mathematically unlikely event happened. That's all that you've proven.
Yeah.
So again, there's no real way to make the leap to, supernatural cause, at least not, epistemically. I mean, you can certainly come up with your imagination can come up, I guess, with whatever it wants to, but imagination isn't the tool you use to determine what really is happening or not.
Until you match what you've imagined up to, to facts that show that it's true, and tested what you imagine against possibilities that would show that it was false, you're just making stuff up. Anything else, Aaron?
Well, I just to mention this. I think the irony here is that I think the God question specifically, though, this is kind of what I wanted to highlight, is particularly egregious because something like miracles or UFOs or whatever else is less unlikely than God causing a miracle to happen. It's a lot easier for me to believe that someone healed someone by putting their hands on them on account of some physical process that is, not yet accounted for. You know what I mean? And maybe in a couple hundred years, humans will have explain that in some other way than to believe that, God made that happen. It's like taking the most outrageous possible explanation and applying that as if it were reasonable.
Yeah.
I do have one other question for you guys.
Okay.
Why is it that you meet at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings at the bagel shop? It seems like you're sort of jettisoning one of the primary benefits of being an atheist. I'm not up that early.
It's actually 10 o'clock at the bagel shop. It's 11 at Furs. First Sunday of each month. It's 11 o'clock at Furs because we have a lecture series. And that's only 11 because they don't open till 11.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I haven't gone to the bagel shop in several
were
months,
not involved in that decision making.
Yeah.
So,
it actually had to do, I think, with the fact that this program used to be on at 9 in the mornings. So we really had to get up early. And then it was a thing.
The group came first.
Oh, the group came
second.
first.
Yep.
Oh, but
that doesn't explain it.
Okay, all right. But it became very handy.
But we will take that. I mean, are you a member of the Atheist Community of Austin by any chance?
No.
Have you ever visited our group?
No, but I'd like to, but
Too early,
well, we will take your concern to the board of directors of ACA and let them know that there are people out there who are interested in the ACA, but kind of daunted by the 10 a.m. price tag.
There is
down there at some point.
Yeah, there is the Wednesday evening thing. There's the Wednesday evening happy hour.
That's right. We have other events. We got Wednesday evening happy hours at
Waterloo
Ice House.
Burnett Road.
It's technically starting at 7 p.m., but people start trickling
8-ish is more realistic.
7:30, 8-ish, yeah.
Is that every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
All right, and that's the one on Burnett, right?
Yeah. Just north of Steck.
And, there's nowhere near as many people there, but you'll...
It's still a way to meet folks and say hi and get a feel for what everyone's like. And they have beer, which the bagel shop doesn't.
Always good.
All right.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much for your call,
It's good
Aaron.
talking to you, Aaron.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your call.
All right, let's go to...
Kim on 3. Oh, she's...
Kim?
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Kim. We're good.
Hi.
How are you?
Hello again.
It's a ritual every Sunday. My friend is over here, and I thought I'd tune her into your show. She's agnostic. It starts with an A, so who knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, so are we.
Well, okay, let me do a quick bit then, okay? An agnostic is somebody who does not think that the question of whether that whether a God exists or not can be proved. Okay? That's what an agnostic is. An atheist is somebody who does not believe in any gods. And so you can be an atheist and an agnostic at exactly the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. She's just looking at me like, all right then.
No. See, it's mostly believers who go around claiming that atheism means that you're making some kind of claim to know for sure that absolutely under no circumstances can there possibly be any kind of God at all.
I think
right?
we both know someone like that. No, okay. Let's not drop names, but I think I'm trying to understand what you're talking about.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to read the National Choir at the same time.
Oh boy, that must be difficult.
Oh boy, talk about your cognitive dissonance.
They go hand in hand for some reason. But, are you saying like, okay, we have somebody at my school, or at least I do, who's very Christian, very Catholic, I would say, and she picks things out of the Bible to believe in.
Yeah.
And if someone else, who's maybe Baptist says, well, what about this? Then she doesn't really no, well, this says this, and she contradicts herself. Like, is that what you're talking about?
With the critical thinking thing I was talking about? No, specifically what I was talking about is in order for a claim to be worth even considering, you have to be able to think of some way you could prove that it was false, if it's false, okay? And so there's a problem with things like God claims, because an omnipotent God could do anything, including like creating those photons on the way to us already, appearing to be, billions of years old, when really the universe is only 10,000 years old, because God created it all at the same time, including the light in transit, okay? So as soon as somebody claims that there is an omnipotent God, it's practically not worth considering, because there's no possible evidence that could prove that an omnipotent God didn't exist, right? Because no matter what you saw, the person who believed in that God could say, well, he just did it that way. He's omnipotent, so he can do it however he wants. Right? That's what I'm talking about.
Make special rules.
Yeah. Or, if you start making excuses for how come you're going to keep, believing something, even though or how come, if you make excuses for how come the evidence doesn't matter, then you're violating the principle of falsifiability.
Exactly. And I don't know if she agrees, but I like your suspenders.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Every time I tune in, I'm hoping they're going to be like extravagant. Maybe.
It's really hard to find good suspenders. At least that's what I've found.
Goodwill.
Okay.
We can't advertise on the show, but we'll.
A store that sells.
No, we get the idea. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good to hear from you.
I'm not doing a Mork from Ork thing here with the rainbow-colored ones, but these ones are getting a little old.
Yeah.
We were just on 3, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Shall we go right along here?
Oh, why the heck not? Yeah.
Okay, then we go to Matt. Matt.
Hello?
Hello, Matt. You there? Matt?
I guess he's
Hello?
not there.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, Matt.
How you doing?
That's you, man. Hi.
Are you?
We're good. How are you?
You okay?
What can we do for you, Matt?
This one
About?
ACA.
Okay.
What do y'all really do?
What do we do?
Yeah.
The ACA is just a social group for people who are atheists. Okay. Because we tend, in a culture like we've got here, where most people believe in gods of various kinds, we sometimes find it difficult to be accepted, and so we get together to hang out. The regular weekly meetings are at a bagel shop where we sit and we eat bagels, and I think he hung up on us. All right then.
Yeah.
I guess you didn't really care that much. Let's go on to the next
something
one.
was seriously wrong with him.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's go to
call 911 on that guy.
Jim. Jim? That's okay. Whatever that was, we're not interested. Don.
Well, hello, fellas.
Hi, Don.
How you doing?
We're good. How are you?
Good. That's a strange expression for an atheist.
How's that?
Oh, are you a bigot?
No, I just thought
What, are you telling us atheists are bad? What are you talking about?
No, I just thought it was a strange expression.
Why would it
How
be
is
a
it-
strange expression?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Why would it be strange? What's wrong with an atheist saying, "Hey, we're good"?
Well, there must be some virtue or something that would, by the standard by which you judge goodness.
Sure, of course.
Sure, there is.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is that?
It is the question of whether an act is good or not is, does it produce beneficial results for people in general, or does it hurt more people than it helps? That's the basic standard.
Okay.
We root our morality in actual practical effects of behavior.
Actions have
what
consequences.
really happens when people really act certain ways.
Okay.
Actions have consequences. It's very simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, we didn't mean good in that sense when you asked us how we were, right? We didn't mean we're moral. That wasn't the sense we thought you were asking.
Well, what would be the difference between morals and goodness?
I don't think there's a difference between. I mean, the morality is the question of what is good behavior and what's bad behavior.
So
Well,
yeah.
that's what you said. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Those things.
Yeah, but we meant when we said we're good, we meant like we're healthy and we're happy and everything's going okay, which is not a moral kind of good. That's a whole different kind of good.
That's not
Sorry,
good.
man, didn't mean to confuse you.
That's not what you asked me.
Okay.
You termed it in phrases of good and bad. I didn't say that. I said it's a strange term.
Yeah.
The fellow asked me the question.
But you understand it now, right? You understand where we're coming from now, right?
Well, not really, because
No.
I think if what morals are is that you don't do anything to hurt other people.
Right?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what we just
good.
said.
So, in other words, you have a standard of morality.
Right.
Correct.
And that standard boils down to, what does the act benefit people in general, or does it harm more people than it hurts?
Okay. Well,
Right. And obviously,
nothing
just
wrong
going
with
out and
that.
hurting some guy for my own benefit is not good for society. It's just good for me, and that's selfishness, and that's not good.
Okay, that's basic morality 101.
Right. Sure.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now to the question.
Okay.
I don't understand whether or not you are agnostic or an atheist. I see the terms up there, atheist,
Yeah.
but you said an atheist can be an agnostic,
Yeah.
agnostic and
Yeah.
one and the same.
Yeah, I'd be happy to explain that to you again. An agnostic is the agnostic position. The term was coined by Huxley, and I'm always unclear on which guy.
Thomas Huxley.
Thomas Huxley. Thank you.
Not Alex.
Right. Thomas Huxley coined the term because he basically said, "Look, guys, I can't tell whether there's a God or not, so I'm not going to take a position. I just can't tell. I cannot interpret the available evidence either way." Right? That's an agnostic.
Okay.
An atheism is a statement about what you believe. Okay? Now, you can look at the situation and say, I just don't see any evidence either way, and then decide, I'm not going to believe that there's any gods. And that makes you both an atheist and an agnostic at the same time. Likewise, I've met many Christians who tell me, I've looked at the evidence. I don't think the evidence proves that there's a God, but I believe anyway. That person is an agnostic and a theist at the same time.
Okay. Now, what proof have you looked at that help you to derive at the conclusion that there is no God?
The burden of proof falls, this is a basic principle of reasoning. The burden of proof falls on the party making the positive claim. We're not making any positive claims. All we're saying is we don't believe, right? If somebody who believes that there's a God wants us to believe also, it is their responsibility to provide the evidence to prove that God actually exists.
No, that's
And what
not
we've-
what you said. You said we have looked at the proof, and I want to know.
When did we say that?
You just said it said a person who looks at the proof and decides that there is no God.
That's all we
He
said.
said that he believes, based on the proof that he's looked at, that there is no God. So I asked you, what is the proof that
If you're
you looked
asking
at?
me, if your point is, might there be evidence out there that would prove that a God existed?
No, that's not what I asked you.
All right.
So, listen,
We don't.
let me phrase it again.
Yeah, dude, I think
Wait.
you're putting
Wait.
words in our mouth,
No,
and I
but
can
if-
tell
if
you
I-
for
if I
sure,
misquoted
if
you-
we said something like that, that is not what we mean, and
Okay,
we
well,
try to
tell
be
me what
very
you
clear.
mean. Tell me what you mean.
Well, I mean exactly what I said when I just described what an atheist is and an agnostic is.
Well, what
An
is an
atheist
atheist?
is somebody who does not believe in any gods, and an agnostic is somebody who does not think the evidence is conclusive either way.
Okay.
Agnosticism has to do with the limits of knowledge, and theism or atheism
Right.
is a question of belief.
Okay, so you did not say that you arrived at your belief based on some proof.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
So it's just a religion. It's a religion of atheism.
No.
No,
There you
no,
go.
it's a- no.
That's what you said. It's
You know,
based on
no,
faith.
No, let me-
you just made it. You just brought up the F word. Okay, we do not base our position on faith. These are basic principles of reasoning. The
Yeah.
time to believe something is after the evidence shows that it is probably true. All we are doing is saying the evidence does not show that there's probably a God, and so we rationally refrain from believing in any gods.
Okay, we're right back where we started. What is the evidence that you've looked at that did not show that there was a God?
The
We
arguments
just went
that we've
over.
been given.
We just went over.
Let me-
the whole falsifiability thing.
Let me ask you a question.
All right, go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in Zeus?
Do I believe in what?
Zeus,
Zeus, the ancient.
Zeus, the father of the Greek pantheon.
Do you believe in Zeus?
No, I don't.
Why not?
What's the evidence you looked at to prove that he doesn't exist?
Do you believe in leprechauns?
No, I don't.
What's
Why
the
not?
evidence that you've looked at to prove
I
that leprechauns
never
don't
said that
exist?
I looked at any evidence.
Here's what
You're the
the
one
point
that
we're
talks
trying to
about
make.
evidence.
The
And
point-
and the point we're saying about evidence is that the burden of proof falls on the people who are claiming that they know what the truth is, right?
the reason-
you are Christians and theists, people who believe in gods. They say that there's a God. It is their responsibility to prove that the God exists. It is not anybody else's responsibility to prove that he doesn't.
Well,
It's
why-
just
why would it
irrelevant.
be- why would it
It's
be-
irrelevant.
Why wouldn't it be the burden of proof fall on you if you say?
Well, let me ask you
Because
this.
it's a basic principle of reasoning, and we got to move on to another call. Thank you very much for your.
But I do want to answer your question.
What line are we on? 3.
I do want to answer his question.
You can answer him offline. I'm
Okay.
tired of this. This guy keeps putting words in our mouth.
No,
and not listening to what we're saying.
If a guy walks up
enough
to
of him.
if a guy walks up to you and he says, "I have an invisible magic elf sitting on my head," are you going to automatically believe him or not? Who's got the burden of proof there? Is it your burden of proof to say, well, I now have to prove that your invisible magic elf doesn't exist? No. He has the burden of proof to say my elf does exist because he's the one making the claim in the first place.
Neither atheists nor agnostics need to prove anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are reactions to the absence of evidence.
Yeah.
Okay. The responsibility falls on the shoulders of the people claiming that they know that a certain thing is true.
Yeah.
If in fact they know that, then they ought to have based that on evidence themselves, and if they have, they should be able to present that evidence. If they cannot present the evidence, they shouldn't be believing it in the first place, but they certainly can't expect to convince anyone. Last week, a friend of mine handed me a business card from some lady whose name I won't mention, who offers something called belief therapy.
Okay.
And works for this organization, the Therapon Institute. So I went to their website to find out just what is this all about. What is belief therapy? Well, here is some of the text from their main page, okay? Explaining who these people are and what their deal is. Quote, for many years, only the therapeutic elite could offer treatment programs in Texas. Not anymore, unquote. That is a quote from Mr. Don Willett, a member of Governor George Bush's staff when he addressed an assembly of criminal justice ministry faith-based program providers at Sam Houston University in 1997. He went on to say, people now have a choice. They now have a choice between the elite, which is to say the educated and qualified
people,
therapists,
or the blithering idiots,
and the other people that weren't the educated, qualified ones.
Yeah, great.
The Therapon Institute now offers alternative counselor certification and licensing. Texas is the first state to establish a registration process for substance abuse treatment and recovery programs that recognizes the value of faith-based counseling. It's that faith-based thing, folks, right, that we had a problem with. Well, okay, so the state says, you no longer have to actually know what you're doing. If you say that you've got God on your side, you can now license people to license and certify emotional counselors. Okay, now.
So what do they mean?
There's another page, belief therapy as a modality. And by the way, I want you to notice the belief therapy has a circle R after it. Registered trademark. Though there are, I searched the internet, there are a number of different groups offering what they call belief therapy. And I didn't check into all those. This is the Texas one that is authorized by our own state government. Okay? This is the one that affects us. But there are other ones out there, and apparently these guys registered it, so now they'll probably be squabbling legally with those other groups.
Ah, well.
Okay, so belief therapy is a modality. Definition. Okay? People do what they do because they believe what they believe. Albert Ellis, father of rational emotive therapy, says, quote, when an undesirable consequence occurs, such as severe anxiety, the consequence can be traced to a person's irrational beliefs. And that's true. That guy is an actual qualified psychiatrist. And he really did come up with a valid thing called rational emotive therapy, right? That's fine. But here's the next sentence. And this is not his quote. This is them now.
Okay.
Belief therapy identifies irrational beliefs as lies and then lists a Bible verse. Actually, 2 Bible verses.
Oh.
You don't have to look them up. We don't care. Obviously, in the Bible, it says all kinds of things about lies, right?
Sure,
and generally, it's like those hideous, evil lies being told about us by non-believers, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then, a little further down, they go on to the concept, psychological theory, blah. So they got a hold of this actual thing, rational emotive therapy, and then they applied Christian fundamentalism to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that now, believing a lie means believing anything other than
Christianity.
You guessed it, Christianity. So check this out. The belief therapist may help the client identify a lie that relates to the present circumstance, place it into perspective, and replace the lie with the truth.
Oh, it's that easy.
Sometimes there is the presence of cognitive dissonance. the anxiety caused by holding opposite beliefs at the same time. Very often, there is the problems, that's exactly what it says, of positional identity disorder, PID. You looked up PID
I looked up
on the
PID.
American Psychiatric Association webpage.
That's right.
And could not find it.
Could not find it.
So as far as we know,
I
this is a
found
thing-
other identity disorders. I did
Yeah.
not find that one.
As far as we know, this is something they made up.
Yeah.
Okay, here's their definition of PID. Trying to become who you already are in Christ, right? And the next sentence. If a client is not a Christian,
Right.
he, she has the most serious form of PID. Okay,
Yeah.
let's all review. What this means is the state of Texas has authorized these quacks to go around certifying and licensing therapists in the state of Texas who have as their premise that if you are not a Christian, you have an emotional disorder called PID.
Yes. That's what they're doing. So it's state-sanctioned religious bigotry.
This
what
is
it is.
state-sanctioned religious bigotry.
Exactly what it is.
That is exactly what it is. And
Yeah,
this
according
is
to them,
what
according to them,
happens.
2/3 of the world's population has an emotional disorder.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And the thing is that this is what you'd have to expect to get if you have faith-based
Funding. Yeah.
social services, let alone faith-based psychiatry, okay? Because faith is belief in the absence of confirming evidence or even in the presence of disconfirming evidence. It's belief no matter what, right?
Right.
No matter what. If you are a Christian fundamentalist, you believe that you are right and the other person is wrong, no matter what the evidence or lack of evidence is.
Yeah.
And when you apply that to psychiatry, you get this. This is the only thing you can get.
Yeah.
It's so obvious that it's terrifying, right? And what do you think you're going to get in every other form of faith-based social services? You're going to get, well, if you just believed in God, your financial problems would be solved. Because if you pray to God, God will give you money.
That's, yeah. You already...
What do we expect? That is exactly what's going to happen when we allow the government to spend tax dollars on these faith-based programs. That is what happens.
Yeah. So, now who all did you write that to?
Oh, I sent emails to a number of organizations. Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal.
Right.
Skeptic Magazine.
Right.
James Randi. Rocky Mountain Skeptics. New England Skeptics. A lot of local skeptic organizations.
Now, what did that woman from the Rocky Mountain Skeptics say?
The woman from the Rocky Mountain Skeptics was the one who told me that this Ellis guy is a legitimate psychologist.
And that he would be
astonished
to realize that
Well, actually, she said her father, who was a student of his, would be appalled. I don't know if that guy's actually alive.
if he's still alive, yeah.
But I contacted the American Psychiatric Association, the Texas Psychiatric Association, the American Civil Liberties Union, and the Atheist Ombuds, and possibly others. I went on an email spree. Oh, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League. Thank you, Dennis, for the reminder.
What about Lloyd
Because
Doggett?
remember, it's not just atheists, right? We're not just annoyed because this is targeting atheists. It's targeting all non-Christians.
Well, what about...
Anybody who's not a Christian, according to these people, has an emotional disorder.
What about Lloyd Doggett?
It's unbelievable.
He was a congressman who opposed H.R. 7. And
You're right. I've actually not sent anything to politicians
I think you ought to send it to Lloyd Doggett because when Lieberman's faith-based bill comes up, he needs to be armed with that.
Let's have that. There's that phone number.
Yeah, let's go ahead and...
Let's have that phone number, shall we? This is a live call-in show.
Yeah.
We are here to take your calls and give you your chance to respond to what we have to say or chime in to agree or disagree, to discuss, to whatever you like. Okay?
Why don't you talk about the burden of proof while we're waiting on our
let's
first
do
call.
the quick burden of proof thing. Now, as you all know, last week I announced that we're gonna discontinue the Rapture report segment because since the 2000 is so far behind us now, Rapture claims are, end of the world claims are kind of petering off, and it's just not enough to talk about. So we're going back and redoing a series that I did a couple of years ago on principles of critical thinking. Last week, I talked about falsifiability. Okay, this is a principle of critical thinking. If a claim is phrased so that no evidence could prove that it was false, then the claim is meaningless and unworthy of serious consideration.
Right.
If the evidence would be the same, whether the claim was true or false, then there's no way to tell if it is true or not, and that makes the claim meaningless, because there is no way of verifying it, right?
Yeah.
It's just a completely vacuous claim. That's falsifiability. Now, I've jumped ahead in the sequence here to talk about the burden of proof, because we had a caller last week who asked us, well, how come the burden of proof falls on you and not on those of us who believe? Well, the reason is...
No, it falls on them, yeah.
It falls on them,
Theists,
and it falls on people who do believe, and not on the people who don't.
Yeah.
Well, the
question is, how can you prove that there is no God?
Right.
The answer is, you can't. But you also can't prove that there's not a planet in the Andromeda Galaxy inhabited by an intelligent race of flying green rabbits.
There's a gold coin at the bottom of my cup here, Martin. You believe me?
Can I see it?
No.
Well, then I don't believe you one way or the other
because you can't see it.
I have no reason to believe you.
Right. And it's a kind of far-fetched claim. You know, I'm not the kind of guy who totes gold coins around a lot.
No.
Okay. Now do you believe me?
Nope.
It's invisible.
Ah, well, I'll just reach in and get it.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to stick my fingers in your water.
No, go ahead. It's too late now.
All right. I don't feel any gold coin in
that's
here.
because it's made of a special substance, you see, that you can't interact with physically.
Okay, so then how do you know it's gold?
Well, because it is.
And how big would it be?
And this relates directly to that whole falsifiability thing.
Yeah,
right? What am I doing here? I am making up excuse after excuse after excuse for how come the evidence doesn't show that I'm right. Okay? And it's easy to do that. Anybody can do that about anything. Say it's invisible. Say it's magical. Say it can teleport, so it can bip from place to place without being seen. Say that if you're biased against believing in it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
You know,
negative energy. I'm putting off negative energy.
Say that you're negative. Your skepticism.
All my negative energy made the coin disappear.
Right. Yeah. You can always layer on excuse after excuse after excuse.
Yeah.
It is not the responsibility of the person who you're making the claim to prove that you're wrong.
Right.
It is your responsibility to prove that you're right. Mm-hmm. And that's why the burden of proof falls on the party making the claim. The burden of proof for the existence of God falls on those who claim to know that he exists. Because what is he? Well, he's this invisible, eternal, spiritual thing that has mysterious reasons for not wanting to reveal his existence in an unambiguous manner, right? The excuses are being piled on. That is a resort to the to lack of falsifiability, which is itself a violation of the principles of critical thinking. And the response to that is to simply refrain from belief. Yeah. We do not have to believe anything until you prove that it's true.
Yeah. It's not an act of faith to not believe something when you have no reason not to believe in that thing. It's simple common sense.
Simple common sense.
Yeah.
Okay. That is a sort of a truncated version of this because we want to get to calls now. Let us go to Don.
Well, hello, fellas.
Hi, Don. You there?
Yeah, I'm right back.
You're the guy that asked about burden of proof. Is that clear to you now?
No, that's not the question I asked.
Okay.
You're framing the question in the wrong mode.
All right, go ahead.
I asked you, what do you believe as atheists? Do you believe that there is no God?
Okay. I will answer you very precisely. I believe that certain definitions of God can be said to be false because they're internally contradictory. For example, there's a thing called the problem of evil, which says if a God that somebody describes is supposed to be omnipotent, which means they have infinite power, omniscient, which means they know everything, and omnibenevolent, which means they love everybody, and there is anything evil in the world, that God cannot exist. Because if there is evil, you can't say he's not powerful enough to stop the evil. You can't say he doesn't know about the evil, and you can't say he doesn't care about the evil. A God by that definition does not exist. Okay? For that God, I'm willing to assert, I know for a fact there's no such thing. Doesn't make any sense. Now, a God who is merely some invisible force who doesn't, and is omnipotent and doesn't want there to be obvious evidence of his own existence, I can't say for sure that there is no such thing. But I still don't believe in him because that kind of a God is a violation of the principle of falsifiability, and the burden of proof falls on the person telling me that that God exists. Until they prove that that God exists, I don't believe. On the other hand, if there's some South Seas Island tribe with a wooden totem pole, and they show that totem pole to me and tell me that that totem pole is their God, I'm a theist as far as that God is concerned. I believe in that God. I can see it. The only place where I disagree with them is, they'll probably have some claims about its miraculous powers that I won't necessarily think are true. But as far as that hunk of wood is concerned, sure, that exists. Okay?
Okay.
So, but atheism is not about what we do believe. Atheists are people who do not believe in any gods. Okay? That is what atheists are. I know atheists who do believe in supernatural things. I think they're very silly, but they exist. Okay?
So
is that clear?
I think it's clear. Let me run it back to you and make sure I've got it correct.
All right.
Atheists are people who believe that there's not any God.
No, I just explained this to you. Certain definitions of God we are willing to assert do not exist. Okay. You'll have to define exactly what God you're talking about before we'll give you our opinion. Okay, we're either going to believe in him, not believe in him, or be uncertain, be unable to have an opinion either way. But we will default to refraining from active belief, which still leaves us atheists.
You believe there are some gods, but you don't believe. Well, in a particular kind of
if a guy points to his totem pole and says that is his God, sure, okay, that God exists. I don't necessarily believe that he's got supernatural powers, right? But I believe that hunk of wood exists.
Okay.
That's as far as I'm willing to go. Okay. Until they can prove that the hunk of wood has got magical powers.
Okay, let me see if I've got you right.
All right.
You do not believe in a God with supernatural powers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that is accurate.
Okay. So really you are a particular brand of atheists. You believe that people do have gods, but you don't believe in the God that say supposedly the God with supernatural powers that created you.
Yeah, certainly human beings point to things and appoint to them gods, right? They say that their hunk of wood is a god, or that their emperor of Rome is a god, right? People do things like that. That kind of thing, obviously, those people that they were worshiping and those totem poles that they're worshiping, those physical objects exist. Okay. Right? So we got no problem there.
Okay, so I got you down. You don't believe in a supernatural God.
And the reason is? Because there's no proof.
That created the heavens and the earth.
Right.
Okay. Now, my question is, you've got to believe. You do not believe in the supernatural God that you
Wait. We've got to believe that we don't believe?
No.
Rephrase the question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You just told me you do not believe in a supernatural God, God with supernatural power.
Right.
That claims that he supernaturally created the heavens and earth.
Right.
And according to your theory that you just cited, since that is your belief, what proof do you have that he does not exist?
No, it's a lack of belief. Yeah. It is a lack of belief. Do you believe there are aliens living inside the sun?
No.
You don't believe that. Do you have proof? Do you have proof that there are not aliens living inside the sun?
Did you not tell me?
I'm asking you a question that will illustrate my position. Do you believe?
I'm not talking about what I believe.
I will ask you this one more time, and if you won't answer my question, we're going to let you go. Do you believe?
But I think it's been demonstrated.
Goodbye. Okay.
Yeah, this is the guy who called last week who tried to distort every single thing that we said.
He does not believe that there are aliens living on the inside the sun, nor can he prove that there aren't.
I think that we made the burden of
proof. Not believing in something is not the same necessarily as asserting that you know for sure that it doesn't exist. As I explained, a God defined merely as some invisible force that doesn't want to be identified, right? That kind of thing, I can't prove that it doesn't exist, but I don't believe in it. Yeah. That doesn't require that I prove that it doesn't exist. It means I think it's far-fetched and not worth consideration.
Yeah. And I think we made the explanation of burden of proof very clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, how much more clearly can we make it? So
let's go on to Aaron.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Aaron. How you doing? We're good. How are you?
All right, great, thanks. I called him last week, too.
Uh-huh.
So, all right.
Okay.
And actually, I have to say, that guy who just called just now,
Yeah.
it's interesting. He's trying to do something specific, which is something we've heard before. And you guys know what he's doing, and so you're responding to it in a way that I think is appropriate. But it's interesting to hear him, try and work with that. And I really feel like he sort of made more progress this week than last week. So if he calls
he's
next
welcome
week,
to call back, and until he stops interacting with us and is just asserting stuff without answering our questions,
Right.
he'll be free to talk again.
But I'm thinking in a couple weeks, you might actually make some progress with the guy.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know.
who knows? We are not here to turn people into atheists.
Right.
That is not our purpose. We
Fair
are here to let other atheists know that they do not have to be in the closet, that it's a perfectly reasonable philosophical position to take, and that there are others out there who agree.
Right on. All right, well, I have something really specific that I wanted to share with you all and with the viewers. Something I heard on the radio on Friday, which was really kind of shocking to me as far as the brazenness of the political opinions put forth. Specifically, I was listening to Hank Hanegraaff's show, the Bible Answer Man broadcast. And his guest was Chuck Colson, who you're probably familiar with, but for the viewers who might
Oh, yeah.
He's
He was one of the White House.
actually-
he was one of the Watergate conspirators.
Exactly, and actually did time for it, and had apparently, refound.
Yeah, he's reinvented himself as a born-again Christian to, and save his reputation.
Exactly. Now he's doing this prison ministry thing, and
Yeah.
claims to have all sorts of support, the secular community. But be that as it may. Okay. Anyway, they had the show, and it was a call-in show, all right. And so people were calling in, asking Chuck Colson their questions. And one guy in particular called in and said, he'd been he had felt like he understood what his morals dictated that he looked for in a politician, but that he didn't know which party to support, in terms of their politics. And, could Chuck Colson help him with this?
Oh boy.
So Chuck says, yeah, it's getting good, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
I wonder what he'll pick. Let's think.
Well, so Chuck said, well, he's plugging his new book, whatever it's called. He said, okay, well, he talks about that in his book, not in terms of Republicans or Democrats, though, okay, but in terms of just sort of general principles, okay? So what he said was that basically everything should be morally centered. So in other words, you should pick the party, and he said this, that where you're not only going to get an economic benefit, but where but also the party that seems to be most specifically guided by moral principles. But he didn't stop there, okay?
Okay.
Specifically, the case that he cited was the missile defense thing.
Yeah.
Because, as he put it, the missile defense issue actually has a really serious moral dimension because the current state, the paradigm we're currently existing under, the mutually assured destruction idea where whatever, is completely amoral. Therefore, missile defense, national missile defense is the moral thing to do. Okay, so we've got it to where you want to support the party with the economic benefit and the moral values
and the missile defense system.
But
is this faith-based missile defense by any chance?
I'm sorry?
Is this faith-based missile defense?
So how is a being like this any sort of moral authority if he creates evil? How is a being that creates evil a moral authority?
God creates evil, God creates good, but here's the deal. You have to be in covenant for him to stop the evil in your life.
Dude, whoa, slow down. Again, a God who is all-powerful does not have to wait for some covenant to happen.
Robert,
a God who is all-powerful can do whatever he wants. If he does not want to stop the evil for the people who are not in covenant with him,
hey Jeff,
then he is not all-loving.
God
right?
is not obligated
it makes
to
no
do
sense.
anything that his word didn't say.
You're right. He doesn't. But we can look at him and
stop all the evil in the world.
Dude.
He never said that.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. If you're going to call him all loving,
all the evil.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye.
We got to go. We're 20 seconds left in the show.
If you're going to call him all loving, then he has to act all loving, and if he doesn't, then he's not.
Anyway,
thanks for watching. We'll be here again next week.
Christians, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong.
We just think you're wrong, Christians.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Last 5
See you next
seconds.
time.
We had to get that out really quickly.